Title: Aperture and Depth of Field. Module: Camera Fundamentals. Among all camera settings, aperture is one of the most powerful creative tools in photography. It does far more than control brightness. It shapes how the viewer experiences focus, depth, and emotional attention within an image. Aperture refers to the opening inside the lens that controls how much light enters the camera. It is measured in f-stops such as f/1.8, f/2.8, f/5.6, and so on. While this may seem technical at first, its creative impact is very intuitive once you begin to observe its effects. In fine art figure photography, aperture plays a central role in guiding the viewer's eye. It determines what is sharp, what is soft, and what is visually emphasized in the frame. A wide aperture such as f/1.4 or f/2 creates a shallow depth of field. This means only a small portion of the image is in sharp focus, while the background and sometimes even parts of the subject become softly blurred. This effect naturally draws attention to a specific area, often the eyes, hands, or a particular curve of the body. It creates intimacy and emotional focus, isolating the subject from distractions. Shallow depth of field can be powerful in fine art photography because it allows the photographer to simplify the image. Instead of showing everything, it encourages the viewer to focus on feeling, form, and atmosphere. The blurred background becomes a soft environment that supports the subject rather than competes with it. On the other hand, smaller apertures, such as f/8 or f/11, create greater depth of field. More of the image remains in focus, from foreground to background. This approach is often used when the relationship between the human body and its environment is important. For example, when photographing a figure in a landscape or architectural setting, greater depth of field allows both subject and environment to be clearly visible. Neither approach is better than the other. They simply serve different artistic intentions. The key is to understand what you are trying to communicate before choosing your aperture. In fine art nude photography, depth of field is not just a technical decision. It is a storytelling tool. A shallow depth of field can create a sense of isolation, intimacy, or dreamlike abstraction. A deeper depth of field can suggest reality, context, or narrative connection between the subject and their surroundings. Another important aspect of aperture is how it interacts with light. Wide apertures allow more light into the camera, which is useful in low-light environments or natural light settings. Smaller apertures reduce light, often requiring longer exposures or stronger lighting sources. Understanding this balance helps you maintain control over both exposure and mood. Aperture also affects how lenses render emotion. At wide apertures, backgrounds often become smooth and creamy, with soft transitions between light and shadow. This can create a gentle, poetic atmosphere. At narrower apertures, textures become more defined, and the image can feel more structured and detailed. One of the most common mistakes beginners make is using a wide aperture without intention. While blurred backgrounds can look attractive, they are not automatically meaningful. The most effective use of aperture happens when it is chosen deliberately to support the idea behind the photograph. For example, if the goal is to create a sense of solitude or emotional focus, a shallow depth of field can enhance that feeling. If the goal is to show the connection between a figure and its environment, greater depth of field may be more appropriate. The decision should always serve the story you are trying to tell. It is also important to practice observing how small changes in aperture affect perception. Moving from f/2 to f/4 may seem like a minor adjustment, but it can significantly change the emotional tone of an image. Learning to see these subtle differences is a key step in developing photographic awareness. In fine art photography, technical control should never exist for its own sake. It should always support expression. Aperture is not just a setting, it is a way of shaping attention, emotion, and meaning. When used with intention, it allows the photographer to guide the viewer's experience with precision and sensitivity. Ultimately, aperture is not about blur or sharpness alone. It is about choosing what matters in the frame, and gently guiding everything else into supporting that choice. And in that sense, it becomes one of the most important storytelling tools in photography.